Okay, all right, let's see if I know what I'm talking about. All right, everyone, my name is Mansoor, and the talk's name is All Access: A Photographer's Perspective on Red Teaming. So, obviously, I used to work as a photographer for 5 years at a newspaper. I did 2 seasons for a small baseball team as their team photographer, and now I work in offensive security as a pen tester. I went to school for IT, so it's not like I just fell into it. I was pursuing the whole pen testing thing from the beginning. And I love social engineering and now Burp Suite. Just some of the pictures I've taken, I guess, to show off a little bit. Don't get that opportunity quite a lot, honestly. Go Mavs. The University of Minnesota can suck it. Yeah, so we did everything from sports to politics to presidential events, and that's leading into what this whole talk's about. It's about people who work in the media, operations staff, and individuals in security, and the bad guys and girls and folks out there too. So essentially we're going to be going over how photographers go about their day as they do their job, but how someone from a security perspective can learn from it or abuse it. Obviously, the First Amendment protects photographers' rights, and that's why it's expected to treat them nicely. But if it's abused, we can get physical, network, and device-level access eventually. Where are these taking place, or where they could be taking place? Any big venue where an NBA game, an NFL game could be played at, NHL, MLB, whatever. So, for example, here we have the Target Center, we have the US Bank Stadium, the Xcel Energy Center. And why? Because, well, it's a God-given right, so it's a God-given right to exploit it as well, I suppose. And if you get lucky, you can get secrets about your favorite team, drama about your favorite band. I love Coldplay, so if they come into town and I hack into their stuff legally, I can find out what's going on. Or emails that your politician sent that show bad stuff, if someone's interested in that. So, how do we get in? There's the right way, the legal way, and then there's the illegal way, of course. For this talk, I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how, as a offensive security professional, I would go about testing it for a client, but also how a threat actor could potentially exploit this. So there's 2 ways you can get in. You need credentials to get in, and you can either get them through social media. So a lot of photographers post them. As soon as they get them, they're like super excited. Post a picture on Instagram, and you can just grab that, Photoshop it out, you're in. Or you can apply for a media credential, and there's a whole process for that. So this is in Mankato, which is about an hour and a half south of here. That's where I've been at for the last 7 years. That's where I live. And in the corner, you can't even see it, but there is a little picture on the wall that shows a picture of the credential. Now that's for event staffs to know what a credential looks like, because that hallway downstairs leads to the locker rooms and all that stuff, and they only want people with credentials to get in there. But it's publicly displayed, so if you just walk past, grab a picture, go home, put together this in like 5 minutes, you have a media pass of your own and you can go down there. Examples of people posting press passes online. A lot of these are my former colleagues, so I blurred out their faces, but these are all from Instagram stories. Harlem Globetrotters, the one on the right is an NFL playoffs game, boxing, UFC, and yeah, that guy's redacted like crazy because he had some tattoos which would give him away, and I don't want that to happen. And sometimes people post pictures of older credentials, and that's a good reference point too. So we can use all of these, and as you can see here, they have a whole legend on the right side which tells you what letter assigns what privilege. So if you have all the ones on the right, you have the BLRPS, you have all access. And that's just out there. I can take a picture of that, come back home, spend a few hours in Photoshop, get that printed, laminated, and I can walk in to the locker rooms and whatever, any place where I'm not supposed to be. So that's one way of getting credentials, right? Or you can do it the way it's supposed to be done. Or how I did it as a young photographer. So I was not going to school for journalism, so I don't know what the process is. This is just what I learned, I did, and it worked. You find, to sum it up, you find the publicist or a manager, and you ask them to, if you can come and take pictures. Now, the third point on that slide, which says why reporter/smaller outlets are a good example. So, the Reporter is the name of the newspaper that I used to work at, and I'm going to use them as an example in this talk as how you could exploit pretending to be someone working at the Reporter, using typo squatting, cloning their website, and attaching email accounts. Full disclosure, this is my old manager. I got her permission for this, so I'm not going to get into legal trouble, hopefully. This is not photoshopped. So first step, buy a domain that is kind of closer to the actual domain, right? msureporter.com is the actual website, and these are the 3 examples I just looked up last night. They're all available for $10, almost. You buy them, you clone the Reporter's website, you get the whole recursive directory structure. You can upload that on your own server that has the new fake domain, and then this is what you send out with your email to the publicist for whoever. So this is Taylor Swift in 2018. Yes, this is the actual email. Obviously, I blurred out some of the information. It is all public information. You can find out who her publicist is. But still, this is literally what I used. Hi, I'm this. I'm interested in that. This is previous work I've done, and let me know if you have any more questions. And then I got this the next day, or well, a few days later. So it's pretty cool. And it's super easy. If I can do it, anyone can, I think. So what do you do when you have access? Well, imagine you pretend, let's just go back a second. We did all this stuff, and now you have a credential posing as a reporter or a photographer from a smaller college. So I did mention all the way here why a smaller outlet is a good example. Now, if you pose as someone from the Star Tribune, which is Minneapolis newspaper, or the New York Times, the Washington Post, one of these bigger ones, their digital footprint is large enough to verify all the information and see, okay, this is not exactly who they're saying. Also, typo squatting in their case is going to be a bit more difficult, and probably be a bit more harder for you to do. So if you find small colleges who have newspapers, or which have newspapers, you can pretend to be them ethically, if you're a good person, and then go on from there, because it's hard to verify that. It's crazy because we got not only Taylor Swift, but we got Travis Scott, we got Elton John, we got Justin Timberlake. Not going to talk about that right now. And a few other big names. Point is, they trust smaller colleges just as they would trust the bigger newspapers. So, you know, why try hard when try hard easy, whatever, I don't know. I'm sorry, hello. Haven't slept much. Okay, what do you do when you have access? So you show up, you get a fake, or you get an actual press pass, pretend to be someone you're not. What happens is you show up to will call, where you pick up your tickets, sometimes, if you have tickets like those, and then that's where you have a press pass. I was gonna bring my press passes, but I forgot them, so that would have helped you understand how they look like even better. They're fun, they're super cool looking. That's why people take a picture of them and they post it online, because they're like, hey, look, I'm cool, I'm taking pictures of Taylor Swift, or, I don't know, I like Coldplay, so I guess Coldplay, whatever. But when they do that, someone can use those, because a tour is, you know, it's like, it's several months long. So you have enough time to grab one and then show up at a later stop. But anyways, so you get your credential, you are escorted into a holding space, kind of, and then that's where they take you, or that's from there they take you to the pit, which is basically this space right here, between the stage and the audience. And you get 3 songs. After 3 songs, they kick you out, and if you have a ticket, you can come back in, but without your cameras. So it's super cool, because the artists are literally at the end of the stage, and you're right in front of them, you're taking pictures. You know, that's what I liked about that job, was I was getting paid to go to concerts instead of paying to go to concerts. And then I got to keep the pictures, and now I'm talking about those. So once you get there, you play by the book, you go in, And now here's the security part, right? You find an outlet if you've done your prior research, or if you have experience, if you work there. You plug in a little Dropbox and make sure that you can actually connect to it. That's point number 3. It should have been point number 2, but that's fine. As soon as that's working, you're good. But the process to doing that can be difficult, especially if someone's introverted or they're not confident, because you're not supposed to be doing any of that, right? So a little tip, I guess, is just act like you've been there or you're supposed to be there. And if you're being nice, that always helps. Just smile and say thank you. Oh, I didn't know. Do you know how we're, whatever. I've done that because I had genuine questions, and that helps. But if you have nefarious reasons, being nice also helps, unfortunately. So don't do that, I guess, if you're doing it for a bad reason. And then bonus point, privilege escalation. Now, this is kind of going away from the whole photographer's perspective, but shout out to Jason Street, super cool guy. I was talking to him in September last year, and he mentioned some of the things you could do, and I was like, that's a good idea. So essentially what I'm talking about is, once you get in as a photographer, posing as a photographer, you get in, and you've had your Dropbox connected, or not, you can go off on the side and switch roles. So now you can have, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jason Street, but in his talks, he always shows a fake Microsoft badge. It's like an old Microsoft employee badge. And he just says, hey, I'm here to look at your servers. And they just let him walk in. So you can do that, and now you have privilege escalation, I guess, of the most simplest terms. Because photographers' press passes are limited. So let's go back here. As you can see on the right side of the slides, there's all those zones. So if you have all those, you have all access. But sometimes you only have 1 or 2, depending on what your role is at that event. So you're limited, and if they enforce that, then you can't really get into places where they need all access passes. So if all goes well, you can maybe, and this is not really too practical. This would involve if you actually had a camera and you were a hobbyist, and you keep going to events, because once you go to an event and you take pictures, you also have to write a review for the concert. Because the way it's all working is the publicist looks at you, they're like, okay, college. People like our songs, we want more kids to listen to our songs, or whoever the artist is. So if they reach out to us, or we reach out to them, and we get an audience, and that way they make more money, and they're happier, I guess. So if you build that relationship, you're establishing persistence in a way. I can't show those emails because those are definitely emails I don't want to share publicly, but in the past, I had really good relationships with publicists of a few bands, and then the more work you do for them, the more inviting they are towards other concerts, and it gets easier to get into concerts. You don't have to prove yourself. They'll reach out and say, hey, by the way, this is coming. You want to take pictures? I'll throw in 2 tickets. I'm like, yeah, sure. But if you're thinking you have to learn how to write all these concert reviews or whatever, you don't have to, because ChatGPT does that. Yeah, it's terrifying how good it was too. But yeah. Part 2, now this is the technical part, right? This is the more advanced. If you get access, what do you do with this? Now, the whole purpose, the premise of the talk is, or the reason we're at a venue, like, say, the Target Center, is because the Timberwolves play there, the Lynx play there, concerts happen there all the time, and then sometimes there are presidential rallies or political rallies or campaign stops. And if you can exploit that, you can do a lot of things. That sounds so dumb saying that, but you get the point. So the attack vector is essentially you have a Dropbox which has multiple ways to connect to different networks, right? You plug it into the venue's network, or their Ethernet port, whatever you have, or you could do your own cellular device, so you don't have to rely on the venue. Once you have established a connection, like a backdoor, like a shell to your remote Dropbox, with some custom scripts and tooling, you can set it up to detect any new access points that show up. So for example, it's actually at the end of the slide, but when a big event happened in Mankato their Wi-Fi password was actually, or they brought their own networks with them. They were traveling. And so those are separate from the venues. And that's what all the staff is using. The staff is not on the same public Wi-Fi or shared Wi-Fi that people at the venue are. Because if they have a whole, touring crew of like 200 people, they're not going to take up all that bandwidth with all the 60,000 people in the stadium. So they need their own access points in the networks. So once you get new access points, you can try and get the creds to their network. You can try DAuth attacks, or you can do social engineering through a captive portal. And that's probably the easiest way, but also probably not as likely to be successful. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but that's a lot more easier than some of the more complicated attacks. But for the most part, it's going to be wireless hacking that gets you access to their network. So once you have connected, and you can actually pivot into the traveling network using the creds that someone provided that you got from either deauthing them, social engineering them, or whatever other method, you can establish persistence on the victim network. So now in this case, I'm going to get so much hate for this, but Coldplay, right? They're in Minneapolis, and I'm a bad guy. This is all theoretical, for legal purposes, of course. So Coldplay's in town, and I'm like, I wonder what's happening between the two guys, the guitarist and the bassist. They're always fighting. So I go in, I sneak and do whatever. I plug in my stuff, blinky, blinky, working, and then I can, I can trap someone essentially by, for example, like a guy who's setting up the stage. They have massive stages. Like this is probably 1/50th of the stage that they have, all the moving pieces, right? So they have a lot of people who set up the stages and stuff. If someone passes by my little Dropbox and I can deauth them and get their credentials, it's really complicated. I'm making it way more easier than it is, but it's possible. Once we do that, and I'm actually able to get on their network, I can hack into Chris Martin's phone and tell him why he sucks and he should release better songs. I don't know, something. Depending on the scenario, of course. Now, this is a childish example just to keep it lighthearted, but it can get worse, especially in the case of political entities, right? So senators, congressmen and women, presidents or potential presidents, like today I think is a debate. So if someone was in that venue and they did this, now we know who, whatever. I don't want to get into that stuff. But this is fun. So this happened in Mankato in 2020, and I've blurred out the password, but I can easily tell you 50% at least if you guys can guess what the password is going to be. But that's only available to people who work on the media tables. So it's not in a public place. It's only if you work as a photographer who's been approved by the Secret Service to take pictures at a presidential event. And if you're on there, now this is one of the other things I was thinking about, how could you potentially exploit this, or what could be the worst thing that could happen? Someone from any of the White House staffers are on the same network that you're on, that you've compromised. Now, assuming that they have some device that's out of date or not patched, or you're really good and you have a zero-day exploit, now you have access to a White House staffer's phone or their laptop or their iPad. And a lot of those guys don't really take security seriously, like most of you, I'm sure. But the point is, that's going to hurt them. It's going to hurt everyone, because at this point, you have access to someone who's in the White House, so you understand what's going on. If people lose their minds getting into conspiracy theories, all that's possible. Misinformation is big. This year is election year, so it's going to get even worse. And if a threat actor or whoever really takes advantage of something like this, it's going to impact us all more than we can imagine, and it's easier than most of you might even think it is. So I blurred out the password just because I was like, I don't want to get deported, can't take chances. And if you are able to do it, the world is yours. You can do whatever you want. You can get in to, like I said, bands, artists, NBA players, WNBA players, NFL players, White House staffers, what have you. Well, what can we do about that? Photographers, do not post pictures of your credentials online, because that is the easiest way people can get access to those. I've shared pictures. I'm not kidding, at least 100 more pictures over the last 5 or few years of people posting those pictures. So that can avoid things dramatically. Security companies, well, work on developing or adding a service offering that's tailored to publicists or managerial companies or management companies that can actually target these specific vulnerabilities, or just create more educational content and awareness about that. And then publicists and management companies can either reach out to security companies and say, hey guys, this is scary. We don't want Coldplay to whatever. Can you do something about that? And offer tailored training. So I think it's, I don't know, I haven't heard much about this, especially as a photographer, because it's, like I said, the First Amendment is super respected for a good reason. But if someone doesn't care, they can definitely, and I have a feeling someone's already done this, we just don't know about that. What's next for me on this project? I want to work on a whole demo of an attack chain. With permission, I have some things in the in my planning book that I'm working on. I also want to develop some tools or a workflow to actually get the Wi-Fi hacking or attacks more feasible, the way I want them or the way I think they would work best in this case. And then most importantly, I'll talk to people who are smarter than me and see if they can help me add on to this and expand on the technical aspects. That should hopefully, you know, get things more developed as a security practitioner, and we can offer these to places like the US Bank Stadium or what have you, just so they're aware, and also the publicists and management companies. That's my LinkedIn. That's all I'm going to talk about. Don't follow me on any other social media, please. And you're going to see a lot of Coldplay. And other than that, that's all I had. So if you have any questions, I can take those. If not, that's that. It's always plastic badges, and I think one of these days this should, a lot of them have barcodes on them, but no one scans them. Like when the Super Bowl was in Minneapolis like 6 years ago, we got this press badge. It was really cool, and I almost was tempted to take a picture of it and post it online. But it has a barcode which specifically dictates what access you have and what you don't. But no one's really implementing that. It's just like an eyeball test. Oh yeah, it looks good. You can come in. I think one of the things people might argue about that too is it's a lot of waste, because every NBA game has a separate credential issued sometimes. Unless you have a season credential, then you can just walk in with one pass for the whole season. But if it's like a freelancer or a smaller newspaper, they apply for each game and you get a new pass every single time. So I should have had a picture of, I do have a picture on here, but I'm not gonna find it. I have like a lot of credentials, but only like this many from 5 years. And that was because I worked at a small college. Actual big newspaper photographers have literal boxes. I'm not even kidding, boxes full, like half the stage size or space-taking boxes full of credentials. And I don't think that's going to go anywhere because it's easy to spot. And if you want to tag someone down and say, hey, you're not supposed to be here, you just look at their credential, you can spot them, you can separate them. So for example, I guess, let me just go all the way back to here. So this is the Minnesota State University's credential. I feel like a snake saying this, but it's really easy to clone this because what they do is they change the color of the background. So if I can just, it's not worth it. But you can see the background around, other than around the logo. So it's purple in this picture, you can't see, but they change it every year. So one year it's purple, the next it's gold, the next it's black and gray. So they switch out just to make sure that they can track photographers, or if they have the most recent or the newest credentials. But they're not going to change from this, because at the end of the day, if someone's crossing, whatever space they're not supposed to be at, they can easily be spotted from a distance if they have those credentials. And you have to have them visible everywhere you go. Sometimes they even give you armbands so they can spot you on the sidelines. If you watch an NFL game and you look at a photographer, they'll have armbands. And sometimes there are different colors which shows different access levels. Yeah. Sorry, what was that? Ticketing systems? So I don't currently do this testing. What I do is just regular pen testing for networks and web apps and stuff like that. I would love to do this stuff, but if I'm understanding your question correctly, which I'm not, I'll just come down again, sorry. No, because and with general admission tickets, it's not really worth it as much, because if you have an all-access pass, you can literally go anywhere you want. A general admission ticket is only going to get you into the concert. So if you like a concert and you're going to get in, I guess that is possible. But from a former photographer, what I'm thinking is I want to be backstage. I don't just want to be attending the concert. And then if you add in the security element, then you have the drop box and all that stuff. So a general admission ticket, not really something that I'm, I guess, doing work on, if that makes sense. Yeah. 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 I've seen people who are confident enough to go in with a ticket that's obviously not that at concerts, and they just like say, "Oh yeah, your machine's broken," and they just walk right past in free concert. But that would be cool to work around with those scanners and see if you can get around those. But yeah. Anyone else? Cool. Thank you all. Appreciate it.